All right, Enterprise Blockchain Forum. Good morning. Hope y'all are feeling energized. I know that we are. Just a quick introduction. I'm Brittany Mays-Ung. This is Vivek Chauhan. We're going to be talking with you about opportunities and trends in the digital asset tracking and physical asset tracking. All right, I think we're good. So just a quick show of hands real quickly. We're going to be talking today about different stakeholders that are involved in asset tracking. So if you are someone who sells a product or a service, will you raise your hand? All right, if you are somebody who is interested in fair trade, environmental impacts, or government regulations, will you raise your hand? All right, finally, if you are a consumer of products and services in any way, shape, or form, will you please raise your hand? Great, okay, so then this presentation is going to be relevant to you in one way, shape, or form. So we're gonna go ahead and get started here. I mentioned that Vivek and I both work for a company called Viant. Viant is a blockchain-based asset tracking platform built on Ethereum, where we basically have the opportunity to help partner with different businesses and help them to prove various claims about their products and their both physical and digital form. Viant is a consensus company. If you're unfamiliar, Consensus is the largest blockchain company in the world, and we are one of 50 plus companies that are currently being incubated by Consensus at large. So we can go to the next slide. We've been around for a few years now. If you were here for the panel, you heard Vivek talk about our brief history of how we went from doing consulting projects, custom applications. We've now moved into actually building a proper platform that is industry and asset agnostic. So in our experiences in the last few years, we've seen a couple of trade finance startups come and go. The thing that we have been able to really synthesize from our experiences is how important this provenance layer is when you are thinking about blockchain. Being able to prove various claims for your product and your asset within a supply chain situation is extremely important. So that's why today we're here to talk with you about what does that mean? What is provenance? What are people and different stakeholders that you engage with or you may be currently? What are they thinking about? What is it about provenance that's so important? So we can go to the next slide. We're going to start out by talking about consumers, specifically about millennial consumers. Many of us, especially with retail backgrounds, tend to wonder, what is it exactly that a millennial consumer wants? You can broaden this to be all consumers, but we're just going to focus in on millennials here for a second. So I wanted to share a few statistics with you, just in case you may be unaware. 8 out of 10 millennials correlate their purchasing decisions to the responsible efforts a company is making. A quarter of millennials are willing to pay a premium price when a product is associated with a good cause. This is money that is being left on the table, especially for companies that are already investing in transparent supply chain capabilities. The third statistic is that you can increase your brand's positioning in the marketplace by demonstrating a dedication to good and fair business operations. In fact, 76% of customers will think more highly of you for doing so. So what does this mean for blockchain? What does this mean for our millennial consumer? We know based on the numerous conversations and our multiple current clients that we have that our consumer is asking various questions. She's asking, where are my products made? Where are the materials sourced? She's asking, who transported my product? What is the real-time status of when I'm going to receive it? We all know with 1, 2 day, 2-hour shipping, this is a real question that's being asked. The millennial consumer is wanting to engage with her product. Specifically, there's all sorts of materials and products that are being sold right now that have you sign up and being able to understand and track where it comes from. The final thing that she's wondering is, you tell me that this specific product is fair trade or organic or non-GMO, but if I'm purchasing something for my child or for my family or something that's a very personal product, how can I trust you? How can I verify this claim that you're making? So we know that the consumer is asking this, and we know that blockchain capabilities, I'm happy to share, are able to answer some of these questions. So there's a few different applications for what blockchain means for our consumer. Blockchain capabilities allow you to basically collect information, store that information in an immutable database, and then articulate that information in a variety of formats. Our product Viant is unique in the fact that the platform Vivek mentioned earlier is meant to be used by businesses, business users. So you don't have to code, you can go onto the platform and model out these business processes very quickly. Then you can turn around to this millennial consumer and say, hey, let's do some A/B testing. I want to understand what data, what amount of information that I need to share with you and verify in order for you to build trust with me as the company. So if we move on to the next slide, next up we are going to talk about regulators. Regulators are seeking to increasingly audit with more efficiency. So they are looking to audit claims from businesses, from consumers, etc. Once again, based on our conversations and our current clients, we see that there's three main buckets in which audit and regulation are relevant. The first bucket is government regulation. Second, my personal passion, fair trade standards. The third is environmental standards. Y'all, if you look around us today, we know that the case for change as it relates to these three topics is very real. We know that 1 million lives can be saved annually if we were able to eradicate the counterfeit trade of medicine. We also know that from a company perspective, those that are going to win in Industry 4.0 are the ones that can prove that they are using less energy and that they are reducing their carbon footprint. Now, we could talk forever about these three topics, but I'm just going to go into a very tactical piece within the fair trade standards specifically. Some of you may know, you may have been affected by some legislation in the UK. It's called the UK Modern Slavery Act. What it requires, let me just make sure I get the number right, is that if you do business in the UK and you bring in more than 36 million pounds annually, you are required to have your board of directors sign off on a document that essentially articulates what you are or you are not doing within your operations to mitigate the risk of forced labor. That is the thing. These regulations are real. And what we've seen is that there are very few solutions that not only are able to bridge the gap of being compliant with regulations, but also communicate to consumers to kill two birds with one stone, if you will. And we've seen that blockchain technology, Viant in particular, is a great solution to this because you're able to very clearly track and trace every single step of a product through its value chain. So just three tactical examples, once again, of what this could look like for your business and your value chain, ways that you can continue to help auditors, compliance bodies, to track what you're doing. First thing, Kevin just spoke about IoT devices. Imagine if you're trying to prove to a consumer that you have, or to a regulator, that you have fair trade compliance standards. You could install an IoT device in a factory in Bangladesh and essentially pull in information on the temperature at any given time and associate that temperature with an asset or a product that was essentially created or manufactured in Bangladesh. That way you can say and stand behind, look, we do have fair trade working conditions within our factories. Another thing that you could do is you can upload and have an immutable tracking of clock in, clock out data to make sure that laborers within your value chain are having effective and fair hours that they're working. The third thing that you could do is on an automatic payments perspective. You can incorporate automatic payments so that laborers and workers across your entire value chain are able to receive payment and minimize that corruption. So with that, we know that these regulations are real and that we have to see real changes. We also know that the future of shopping and for our consumers are changing. So I'm going to pass it off to Vivek, who's going to talk to us about that third bucket of sellers of products and services.
Hello. Yeah. So sellers across industries are struggling with a range of challenges which broadly fall into the bucket of transparency, traceability, and accountability. And on the slide here, we have a bunch of statistics which highlight the magnitude of problem in the industry. But for me, it also highlights the magnitude of impact which blockchain is enabling. And I want to say it's enabling as compared to will enable, because day in and day out, we are working with companies who are using the technology to make impact, to make it real as possible. Let's take the case of the food sector, right? By differentiating yourself from the bad actors, you have an opportunity to create a premium for your product, show that you are using sustainable practices, create more brand value. Backward traceability is a huge nightmare even for the best companies in the world with their state-of-the-art supply chain systems, because it can take up to a week to track where a particular produce came from. But once you put the wirings on and pour these things into a blockchain, you can do that in a couple of seconds, and it has been demonstrated. Similarly, on the manufacturing side, companies struggle with compliance norms, transparency issues, fake goods, loss of revenue, sometimes even fatal incidences. But when you actually create a supply chain or a system which is on the blockchain interacting digitally, you can actually promote transparency and trust, which can help generate better revenue and avoid any compliance issues. We are seeing that in the services industry. In India, about 66% of all civil cases are related to property dispute. And we are working with land title registries, sovereign governments, in helping land titles on the blockchain. So it can actually eliminate the need for title insurance industry, let alone say making cost savings, right? So, and I have these three buckets because we are working with pharma majors, FMCG majors, food companies, and so on. So these are real world impact which we are seeing right now. And we are seeing that right now because sellers around the world are aware that failing to innovate is much more costly than innovating and failing. And that's the reason we are seeing these engagements right now. And we talked a lot about blockchain since morning. It's almost noon now. So I don't want to talk more, but I want to show you guys a quick video to make it real for you. A work which we did with the World Wildlife Fund, tracking yellowfin tuna all the way from the boat in Fiji to packaging, shipment, to your plate here in Brooklyn. And all you need to do is scan the barcode and see the whole history of where the tuna came from. So it's on the, if you could click the bait to plate video on the top. No, go back. Go back. The bait to plate video on the top. Yes. There you go.
And while it's loading, I'll just mention that Vivek and I both have our business cards up here at the front table by the door. So even if we can't connect with you live right now, we will leave those there to connect at a later date.
Allow.
All right, and also while we're waiting, we'll just orient you to what this is. One thing I want to call out is here on the right side of the screen, you'll see a sample of what our sort of UI is for Viant. It's an opportunity for, you can essentially scan a QR code or any other type of code. It's auto-generated and assigned to the asset. And it populates a series of information. You can see who created what along the value chain. You can see when. It pops up with a map showing the physical, like on a map, the physical journey of the product or the asset. Is the video going to work?
Yeah, it seems we have some technical challenges, so let's skip the video. We don't have an option, but if you have any questions, I think we can take one question and then move on.
Yeah, and if you're curious about the video, we would highly encourage you, just Google bait to plate. Got that little thumbnail. It's very interesting.